I never imagined I'd be the narrator of a story this devastating. My name is Michael Thompson, and for almost 13 years I believed I had the perfect life, a devoted wife, Sarah, a bright and joyful 10-year-old daughter, Emma, and a cozy home in suburban Columbus, Ohio. Together, we built routines that most people dream of: weekend pancake breakfasts, bedtime stories punctuated by belly laughs, and date nights where Sarah would stare at me with the same infatuated gaze she did back in college. But I'd been blind to the cracks forming beneath the surface. It began with small things I excused as stress or creative burnout. Sarah, a talented graphic designer, started taking late nights at the office to work on projects, and I'd rationalize that new account she'd mentioned. Then came the unexplained receipts for dinner reservations at fancy restaurants I'd never been invited to, the lipstick on collars subtly different from her favorite shade, and a faint trace of cologne that wasn't mine when she returned from supposed team lunches. At first, I told myself these were coincidences or that I was succumbing to paranoia. After all, Sarah was the woman I loved, and our daughter adored her mother. Our daughter, Emma, was the truest measure of our happiness, or so I thought. Her infectious laughter animated every corner of our home, from the squeaky swing set in our backyard to the patchwork quilt on her bed covered in unicorns. Watching her imitate her mom's animated expressions or hear her say, "Daddy, look at my drawing," filled me with an unshakable sense of pride. She was blissfully unaware of any tension brewing between her parents until one Tuesday afternoon changed everything. I came home early, hoping to surprise Sarah after a long day at work. I'd been planning a little token of appreciation, a bouquet of daisies, and I wanted to see the smile on her face. Instead, I heard laughter, genuine, unrestrained, and hauntingly familiar. I crept down the hall and peered into the guest bedroom where she was seated on the bed with a man I didn't recognize. He had dark hair streaked with silver at the temples and an easy smile that seemed to belong to someone she'd trusted before. Sarah's eyes sparkled as they met mine through the crack in the door, and I felt my world tilt on its axis. I retreated to the kitchen like a wounded animal. My hand shook as I poured water, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Sarah emerged a few moments later, her face a mask of calm. She explained it away: joint project meeting, old friend visiting town. But the lie was so flimsy it tore at my mind. I stared at her, the flowers I'd brought wilting in the vase on the table, petals drooping like the future I'd once imagined. That night, sleep eluded me. I heard the hum of the refrigerator, the wind rustling through the trees outside our window, and the distant sound of Emma's peaceful breathing. I ached to hold her, to shield her from the storm, but I felt paralyzed by betrayal. I realized my family was no longer the safe haven I believed it to be. For the next 2 weeks, I tiptoed around Sarah's secret life. I checked her phone when she left it unattended, examined her emails for clues, and even followed her car one evening, trailing behind to a dimly lit cafe downtown. I watched her meet the same man, Daniel Carter, as I later discovered, laughing as though she'd found something she'd been missing for years. My heart broke each time I saw her lean in close, fingers brushing his, as if our marriage held no weight in comparison. And Emma? She was happier than ever, telling me how Mom and her had the best days, how she'd been treated to ice cream cones and carousel rides during secret outings. My daughter, innocent and trusting, celebrated a man who was unraveling the very fabric of our family. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. One morning, I confronted Sarah in the kitchen. The sunlight slanted through the blinds, painting stripes across her face. I held the cologne-scented shirt in my hand and asked, voice trembling, "Who is he, Sarah?" She sighed, a sound what felt like defeat and relief all at once. "His name is Daniel. We dated in college. He's back in town, and I made a mistake." I heard the words but couldn't process them. A mistake? This affair felt like a chasm too wide to cross. My mind reeled. How could someone I loved so deeply choose someone else? But more terrifying was the realization that my daughter saw this stranger as a source of fun and attention that her father could no longer provide. That afternoon, I took Emma to the park alone. As she laughed and ran toward the swings, I wondered how to dismantle the illusion Sarah had built for our daughter. The man who had her giggling and skipping across wet cement would soon become the villain in Emma's world, and I wasn't sure my little girl was ready for that truth. I spent that night drafting letters I couldn't send to Sarah, to Emma, even to Daniel if he ever showed his face again. Every word I wrote felt inadequate. How do you articulate the end of your world when your heart is still beating in its ribcage? I finally crumpled the paper and fell asleep at the desk, the glow of my laptop still illuminating my tear-streaked face. When dawn broke, I knew I had two choices: snap and risk destroying every relationship in our family, or find a way to confront the betrayal while protecting my daughter's innocence for as long as possible. I didn't know which path was saner, but I knew I had to choose one. The morning after my silent vigil at that roadside diner, I returned home more determined than ever to salvage what remained of my marriage and to shield Emma from the fallout for as long as possible. I convinced myself that honesty, carefully measured, might be our salvation. Over lukewarm coffee in the kitchen, I looked at Sarah across the table. Her ghostly pallor and dark circles said she felt as wrecked as I did. Yet when our eyes met, there was no spark of recognition, only resignation. "I've thought about everything," I began, voice low. "We need to talk." She nodded, confirming the fear I'd harbored for weeks. There would be no easy out for either of us. "I know," she whispered. We decided to start with a timeline, a brutally honest accounting of how we got here. She told me about her first encounter with Daniel after college, a chance meeting at a design conference a month ago. He'd seemed excited by her recent success, more attentive than I'd been. Sarah confessed she felt undervalued, invisible in our routine. Mom, employee, wife on autopilot. He listened to her ideas, applauded her creativity, challenged her intellectually, and, most dangerously, made her feel seen. I listened without interruption, though each word pounded like a hammer. I thought of the nights I'd come home late, exhausted, to collapsed piles of laundry and supper in the microwave. I remember dismissing her frustrations with tired jokes or telling her to relax. It wasn't malicious, it was effort, work, chores, obligations. Somewhere between diaper changes and budget spreadsheets, I'd forgotten to notice the woman beside me. Sarah's eyes glistened. "I never meant for it to go beyond a few lunches," she said. "But every time he made me feel important, I craved more. And then it was too late." I swallowed. "And Emma?" Her face crumpled. "That's my biggest regret. She deserves stability, her hero mom, not this betrayal." I sighed, the air in my lungs like gravel. "We need boundaries for our marriage and for her." The next days were a careful choreography of small steps. We agreed to end Sarah's contact with Daniel. She sent him a curt message. She was married, it had been a mistake, and they could never speak again. I watched her press send and felt relief and dread tangled in my chest. Relief that the affair might end, dread that the wound would remain. For Emma's sake, we kept routine unbroken as long as we could. Weekday bedtimes, weekend pancakes, soccer practices. But behind closed doors, Sarah and I began couples counseling. In the cramped waiting room of a therapist's office, holding hands but speaking little, I recognized the remnants of intimacy between us were still there, beneath the hurt, beneath the resentment. We learned new ways to communicate. I feel statements instead of accusations, active listening where each of us repeated the other's words for clarity. In one session, Sarah said, "When I feel unseen, I start looking for someone else to see me." I realized I had to be more than a provider. I had to be a partner, an ally, a mirror reflecting her worth. Simultaneously, I struggled with my own anger and grief. Late at night, I'd wake drenched in sweat, images of Sarah and Daniel laughing in my home swarming my mind. I channeled that pain into solitary runs, pounding the pavement under streetlights until my legs burned. I journaled my rage, my sorrow, anything to keep from bursting in front of Emma. I couldn't pretend I was unscathed. They'd torn a piece of me away, but I could choose how to heal. A particularly hard moment came when Emma asked me, "Daddy, why did Mommy need Uncle Dan?" I almost crumbled right there. But I took a breath and said, "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Mommy was confused, but she loves you more than anything." Her nod was solemn, her eyes wise beyond her years. I realized then my daughter didn't need every detail, she needed reassurance that she was loved and safe. A month into counseling, Sarah and I planned a small getaway, 2 nights at a lakeside cabin where we promised to phone home twice a day but otherwise disconnect from the world. The morning we left, Emma hugged each of us tight, her eyes tearful but trusting. "Be happy," she told us before climbing into her seat. Her bravery punched my heart. I vowed to live up to it. In the cabin's silence, we talked for the first time about our marriage's real strengths, shared values, deep affection, memories of laughter and triumph. We hiked trails without checking our phones, cooked meals together, danced in the living room to songs that once made us dizzy with love. I saw Sarah's smile return, soft but genuine. At night, we spoke truths, my resentment, her regrets, our mutual desire to rebuild. On the last morning, as sunlight filtered through pines onto the lake's glassy surface, Sarah took my hand and said, "I'm sorry for everything. I'm committed to us." I realized our journey wouldn't be linear, but as long as we moved forward together, we might just survive. We returned home hopeful but cautious. Daniel's last message, "I'm sorry it ended this way," lay unread in Sarah's inbox. We agreed to delete it together. As the trash emptied, I recognized that forgiveness wasn't forgetting. It was choosing love despite the pain. That evening, Emma bounded into the kitchen with a drawing of our family, all smiling faces. She pinned it to the fridge and looked at us expectantly. "Everything's okay, right?" she asked. We both nodded, arms around each other. She beamed. In that moment, I felt our fractured family held together by a fragile hope that honesty and effort, however imperfect, could mend our broken bonds. We still had a long way to go, but for Sarah, for Emma, and for myself, I was willing to walk every step. The days following our cabin retreat felt almost surreal. For a fleeting moment, it was as though the affair had never happened. Just two people rediscovering each other in the hush of pine forests. But reality waited at home, with bills to pay, soccer practices to attend, and, more pressingly, a 10-year-old girl whose world had tilted on its axis without her consent. The hardest conversation loomed, telling Emma that her innocent secret outings with Uncle Dan weren't quite what she'd believed. I could see her in the living room after school, coloring at the coffee table with deliberate care, brow furrowed. I sat beside her. The crayons clicked softly as she set them down and looked up at me. "Daddy, can we talk about something?" My heart clenched. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Is Uncle Dan going to come back?" The question punched me in the gut. How do you tell a child that the person she trusts and loves is now a stranger? I took a breath, recalled the therapist's advice: speak simply, honestly, and reassuringly. "Emma, remember when we talked about mistakes?" I began gently. "Sometimes grown-ups make choices that can hurt others, even by accident. Your mom really cares about you, but she made a mistake with Daniel. He won't be coming back." Her eyes filled with tears as confusion and sadness collided. "But I miss him," she whispered. "He made me feel special." I wrapped her in my arms. "Mommy and I both love you more than anything in the world. You are special every single day. You don't need anyone else to make you happy." She sniffled, burying her face in my shirt. As I held her, I felt the full weight of responsibility. To be both parents in this fractured moment, to fill the void left by Sarah's betrayal. That night, I watched Emma sleep, her slim shoulders rising and falling under the blanket. I kissed her forehead, promising silently I would protect her heart no matter what. Over the next week, Sarah and I carefully restructured our family routines to reinforce stability for Emma. Monday nights became Dinosaur Book Club, where Sarah read aloud from the latest animal encyclopedia. Tuesdays were my turn to coach her through math homework in the makeshift study corner I'd set up. We instituted Family Circle every Wednesday. No screens, just conversation about highs and lows of the week. One evening during Family Circle, Emma surprised us. She said, "I know things are different now. I still love you, Mom and Dad. I want us to be happy." Her maturity humbled me. Sarah's eyes glistened, and I reached across the circle to take her hand. In that moment, I realized that while Sarah's actions had shaken us, Emma's capacity for forgiveness and love was teaching all of us how to heal. Sarah struggled too. I saw her wrestle with guilt each time she looked at our daughter. She started writing in a journal she left on the kitchen counter. Nothing elaborate, just raw entries. April 26th. I missed Emma's big soccer game. Why was I chasing someone else's attention? And May 1st. I want to be the mom she deserves. I left small notes alongside her journal. "I love you. Thank you for trying. And we'll get through this." Sometimes she'd add a reply. Our unspoken exchange became another form of therapy. At work, Sarah's performance stabilized as she applied the same honesty she'd been cultivating at home. She set clear boundaries. No late lunches without advance notice. No unapproved weekend plans. She apologized to her team for her earlier unavailability. Watching her regain professional integrity reminded me why I'd fallen for her in the first place. I also began my own journey. Grief counseling helped me unpack anger I didn't even know I carried. In group therapy, I met men whose stories echoed mine: betrayal, shame, and the struggle to trust again. Sharing my experiences taught me that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was the bridge to resilience. Back at home, The affair's aftermath rippled through extended family gatherings. My parents asked gentle questions. Sarah's mother, once suspicious, now looked at her daughter with cautious pride as she introduced me as my best friend. At Emma's school talent show, Sarah cheered louder than anyone when Emma performed a dance routine. I filmed her, watching the genuine joy on her face, even if at times I felt like an outsider in my own life. A pivotal turning point came on a Sunday afternoon when Sarah invited me to join her in painting Emma's bedroom mural. We stood before the half-finished forest scene, filled with whimsical trees and friendly animals. Sarah asked, "Do you think it's okay?" I dipped my brush in green and added leaves to a tree. "It's perfect," I said. She touched up the details around a cartoon fox. "For Emma," she whispered, "I want her to flourish." I realized then that rebuilding trust was like painting a mural. You layered it stroke by stroke, color by color, with patience and care. The original design might have been scratched away, but a new masterpiece could still emerge. For months later, a crisp autumn breeze rattles the leaves outside our kitchen window as I prepare pancakes for Emma. It's our Saturday tradition, flipping golden discs of batter while Sarah sets the table. She hums softly, a tune we used to dance to in college. I watch her and remember the woman who once sneaked away to rendezvous with her old flame. Now, she's fully present. We've reached a milestone. No tears at dessert, no lingering doubts and bedtime stories. Instead, there's laughter as Emma competes to see who can stack the highest pancake tower. We celebrate small victories, Sarah making it home on time without stress, me sending her encouraging texts at work, Emma asking if she can help Daddy pay the bills so she knows how it's done. Last month, we attended a parent-teacher conference together. Ms. Reynolds praised Emma's resilience and compassion. "She has such depth for her age," she said. I squeezed Sarah's hand. We both knew the backstory, how Emma's family had been shaken, but Ms. Reynolds only saw a girl who'd thrived through adversity. Sarah and I also marked our first anniversary since the affair, an unromantic dinner at home, but meaningful. We exchanged handwritten letters, in which she poured out regrets and gratitude, and I wrote about my renewed commitment and hope. We laughed as we read them aloud, letting vulnerability bridge the gap that once yawned between us. One afternoon, I found a note on my pillow. "Meet me in the backyard after Emma goes to bed." Curiosity piqued, I waited until the house was quiet, then stepped outside. A candlelit path led to our old swing set, now freshly painted. Sarah stood there, a picnic blanket at her feet, and a bottle of our wedding champagne. "I wanted to remind us," she said, voice trembling with emotion, "that we can still create moments of magic." She handed me a glass. We sat on the swings, feet brushing the grass, and reminisced about our first kiss under the stars at that very spot. The champagne tickled my lips as I realized how far we'd come, from betrayal's depths to this moment of rekindled joy. The healing process extended beyond us. Daniel's presence faded like a distant echo. He left town, no longer accessible to Sarah or Emma. We didn't speak of him. He became a cautionary tale we referenced only when teaching Emma about trust and boundaries. Therapy tapered off when our counselor gave us homework instead of sessions, monthly check-ins together, quarterly solo appointments, and a promise to communicate before letting resentment fester. We take those assignments seriously. In our shared digital calendar, relationship maintenance blocks 2 hours every Sunday for whatever we need: date night, heart-to-heart, or silent company. Now, as autumn yields to winter, our home is decorated in warm lights and handmade ornaments. Emma has painted a ceramic heart ornament, 2 halves labeled Mom and Dad that meet in the center. She hung it on the tree with a triumphant grin. It's our family's emblem, separate souls choosing unity each day. One evening, I overheard Emma telling her friend Lila on a play date, "My mommy and daddy fight sometimes, but we always fix it. That's what families do." My chest swelled. Through her eyes, I saw the unexpected gift our pain had given us, a model of resilience and forgiveness. The road ahead remains uncertain. Trust can still tremble. Some days, I catch myself scanning the hallway for signs of Sarah's old secret, or she wonders if I'll slip back into silent resentment. But each time we falter, we return to our covenant: honesty, empathy, and deliberate acts of love. Tonight, as I tuck Emma into bed, she wraps me in her arms and whispers, "Thank you, Daddy, for fixing everything." I feel tears gather. "Baby girl," I say, my voice thick with emotion, "you helped fix everything." Walking down the hall, I find Sarah waiting in the doorway. We share a quiet smile, no words needed, before she joins me for our own bedtime routine. I wrap an arm around her waist and feel the steady rhythm of her breathing against mine. In the warmth of our room, I understand that true love isn't flawless. It's the choice to stay and rebuild again and again. 16 months have passed since that Tuesday when my world fell apart. The ache remains in my chest, a souvenir of betrayal, but it no longer defines us. Instead, it's a reminder that healing, like a well-tended garden, can flourish after the harshest winter.